Support comes from Mosby Building Arts. This year, put your trust in Mosby Building Arts for fresh designs and the elevated remodeling experience you deserve. Inspiration at callmosby.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Wednesday, January 14th. I'm Abby Larico. Alpha-gal syndrome is spread by ticks and creates a severe allergic reaction to red meat and dairy products. It can also make activities like hunting much more dangerous.
I'm not going to let a tick beat me. I'm not going to let it win. I'm going to go out there and I'm still going to do what I love to do.
We'll hear from a Missouri hunter who's trying to figure out how his new allergy and the activity he loves can coexist. That's coming up after this news on The Gateway. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe says he plans to ask voters for permission to eliminate the state's income tax. The governor announced during his State of the State address yesterday that he'll ask voters to phase out the tax over 5 years. The measure would be on the ballot in November. That shifts any conversation about replacing the lost revenue to next year's legislative session. Kehoe says that plan should include an expansion of the sales tax to digital services and monthly subscriptions.
When these types of modern services are taxed, it will create a new revenue for local governments. These increases will need to be offset by reducing local taxes like property tax.
But Kehoe says he does not support sales taxes on agriculture, healthcare, or real estate. The income tax makes up 2/3 of the state's general fund revenue. Democrats in the Missouri House say the governor's plan to eliminate the state's income tax will ultimately be a tax increase for Missouri families. Minority Floor Leader Ashley Awney says raising the sales taxes still might not be enough.
So while most Missourians would get smacked with a massive tax increase to pay for yet another unwarranted tax cut for the rich, it could still leave the state collecting less revenue than before, which inevitably will mean devastating budget cuts.
Kehoe's proposed budget for next year includes $600 million in cuts. If approved, the 4% decrease in spending would be the end of a series of state budgets that were boosted by federal dollars from the COVID-19 pandemic. House Budget Committee Chair Dirk Deaton says he agrees with the governor's sentiment that tough decisions have to be made.
This is not unlike what Missouri households have to do around the kitchen table all the time. And you got to live within your means, and that's what the people have elected us to do, to come up here and make sure that state government and state spending is accountable to them.
Deaton says he would have supported a budget with even steeper cuts. The governor is asking for more money, though, to respond to last May's EF3 tornado in St. Louis. STLPR's Lily Halloran reports.
Kehoe's budget includes $86 million more for tornado response in St. Louis. That's in addition to the $100 million that was approved in a 2025 special session. If approved, some of the money would go toward demolishing unsafe residential structures and clearing debris. Kehoe said in his speech he was grateful for the work of first responders in St. Louis.
I'll never forget being on the ground that next day in St. Louis, just blocks from where I grew up, the morning after the destruction, and seeing the work of the first responders and community leaders in action.
State Budget Director Dan Hogg says tornado relief is a top priority for Kehoe, who is continuing to work with the city of St. Louis. In Jefferson City, I'm Lily Halloran, St. Louis Public Radio.
Governor Kehoe also advocated for more funding to the state's private school voucher program in his State of the State address yesterday. As St. Louis Public Radio Sarah Kellogg reports, House Democrats have vowed to push back on that plan.
Governor Mike Kehoe is asking for $60 million to go towards the state's program providing scholarships for private education. That's an increase of $10 million compared to last year's budget, but less than the $100 million requested by Treasurer Vivek Malik. House Representative Betsy Fogel, a Springfield Democrat, says she was relieved to see a smaller request. However, the issue is still something the Democrats will oppose.
I think if we are going to go down this path of privatizing education, which the governor has made clear his intent to do so, we cannot do it at the expense of our public education systems.
According to Fogel, the proposed budget for the foundation formula falls around $190 million short of what it should be. That marks the second year that Kehoe has proposed not fully funding the state's K-12 education formula. In Jefferson City, I'm Sarah Kellogg, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Missouri State Board of Education voted yesterday to drop St. Louis Public Schools' status to provisionally accredited. The surprise decision came after the school district failed to turn in its annual audit report on time. It was due at the end of last year. The district says it's working to turn in the documentation by the end of the month. State Board member Carrie Casey of Chesterfield initiated the vote.
Unless we hold our schools accountable, the children of Missouri will suffer. They will not receive the education that they are entitled to, that we are responsible to deliver to them.
SLPS School Board President Karen Collins-Adams says the district is disappointed in the change in classification.
The district is confident that the continued measurable progress will support a return to full accreditation. SLPS remains focused on its mission, serving students, supporting educators, and strengthening trust with families and the community.
Provisionally accredited status will lead to additional monitoring and support from the state, but officials did not provide any specifics. Missouri child care subsidies have been restored after a pause ordered by the Trump administration last week. Over half of Missouri's child care providers were left without payment for subsidy invoices dating back to December 30th. Over 90% of Missouri's funding for these subsidies comes from the federal government. Tamika Perrine is the executive director of the Gateway Early Childhood Alliance. She says some child care providers have closed as a result of the cuts.
They have to go through the process of reopening. Some children have moved to different facilities, and so it's really been disruptive. And so now all of those pieces have to be put back in place, if they can be put back in place.
State officials say providers receiving money from child care subsidies can expect to receive delayed funds by Friday. The Missouri Supreme Court has upheld a ban on surgeries, cross-sex hormones, and other care for transgender patients younger than 18. St. Louis Public Radio's Sarah Fenton reports on the unanimous decision upholding a lower court's ruling.
The ACLU and other organizations sued the state on behalf of patients and their families shortly after the Missouri legislature voted for the ban in 2023. They argued the ban violates the Missouri Constitution by discriminating based on sex and transgender status and denies the right of parents to make medical decisions for their children. The court disagreed, ruling the law instead classifies treatment only by age and medical purpose. Lawyers for the plaintiffs argued the ban singles out transgender patients and that the state called witnesses that lacked relevant expertise. The Supreme Court also ruled the state could prohibit the use of Missouri Medicaid funds for gender-affirming procedures. I'm Sarah Fenton, St. Louis Public Radio.
Overall crime in the city of St. Louis decreased by 16% last year. That's according to data shared by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. In a press conference on crime numbers, police officials said sexual assaults dropped 41%. Robberies, burglaries, and aggravated assaults also all decreased by at least 10%, and murders dropped 7%. Mayor Kara Spencer says last year saw the lowest number of homicides in 12 years.
One of the main reasons that we're seeing a continued decline is that our police officers are performing well above national averages in actually solving homicides.
St. Louis police say the city's homicide clearance rate is at 84%, compared to the national average from a few years ago of 50%. St. Louis County Police also shared its crime data and said major offenses dropped 8.5%. St. Louis Health Department officials are asking for help to locate several monkeys first spotted by residents last week. You don't have to press rewind on your podcast players. I'll repeat this. St. Louis Health Department officials are asking for help to locate several monkeys first spotted by residents last week. You probably have seen this one on your social media feeds. Well, officials confirmed Tuesday that the sightings were legitimate. The health department received reports multiple primates were seen near O'Fallon Park in North St. Louis, and a police officer spotted at least one of the monkeys roaming free. Environmental Health Bureau Chief Justin Hauser said it's likely that a person is now harboring the monkeys, and it's unlikely that they're still roaming the streets.
The information we're receiving now, yes, suggests that the monkeys are no longer are at large and that people have the monkeys.
Hauser added that a proliferation of AI-generated memes and fake images have complicated search efforts. City ordinance prohibits residents from keeping most exotic animals as pets. That includes monkeys. The city's health department, though, does say it will waive any penalties or fines for someone who turns in one or more of the monkeys. Health officials say people should not approach the animals and should call the Citizen Service Bureau if they spot one. Y'all, I really can't take a day off, can I? Allergic reactions from alpha-gal syndrome can be physically dangerous, even deadly, but it can also impact someone's mental health by making some of their favorite activities more dangerous. Rebecca Smith goes hunting and talks to those who are trying to preserve their identities while also protecting their health.
It's still dark outside. The wind chill is 7 degrees below zero, and hunter Nick Telscher has been in his deer stand for a little more than 3 hours.
How long do you usually try to stay out?
Telscher has been bow hunting for the last 10 years or so.
You kind of get to a point where you say, how much longer can my toes take it? Is it worth it?
It turns out not much longer that morning, and before long, he's headed back to his wife Tandra and their 2 kids. They say this year has been very different for the family because Nick was diagnosed in May with alpha-gal syndrome, a tick-borne allergy to mammalian-based products such as red meat and dairy.
My results come in, and I immediately was like, nah, that's not right.
Telscher said he was so sure that he didn't have the condition that he asked his doctor to run the blood test again. And when the results came back,
the numbers are exactly the same, and so that sucked.
The doctor actually had to she got onto him a little bit.
That's Nick's wife, Tandra.
And basically was like, this is real. You're getting an EpiPen. You're carrying your EpiPen because a lot of people don't make it if they don't have one.
He says at first he was angry that something as small and seemingly insignificant as a tick could impact his life in such a huge way. He says it was hard not being able to eat the venison he'd harvested himself, but then he learned of other hunters who'd had allergic reactions, serious, even deadly ones, when field dressing deer and being exposed to their fur and blood. So he started packing up his hunting gear.
You need to grieve this. It is a loss of a major component of who you have understood yourself to be.
That's Dr. Paige Freeman. She's a psychologist who focuses on health and food allergy anxiety.
But this is a loss of identity that has been imposed on you that just seems extraordinarily difficult.
Freeman says in addition to the physical impacts of the allergy, there's also a huge psychosocial aspect. Those with alpha-gal, she says, are often overwhelmed by their new realities, sometimes still trying to get diagnosed, educating themselves on the condition, learning to read labels to avoid accidental exposures, all while trying to explain to their families and communities what they need to stay safe. Back in Ozark, hunter Nick Telscher says he was literally packing up his hunting gear when he stopped.
Okay, why do I go hunt? What are the reasons to go hunt? The big thing for me is it's that connection back to the land and to nature and things like that.
So after talking with his wife Tandra and his doctor about what he needed to do to stay safe, such as carrying an EpiPen and wearing protective equipment when cleaning a deer, he decided to stick with hunting.
I'm not going to let a tick beat me. I'm not going to let it win. I'm going to go out there and I'm still going to do what I love to do. Now I just make sure I spray down with some more permethrin and tick repellent,
He says he plans to donate any venison he harvests to friends and family. And he's even created a social media platform, the Alpha-Gal Hunter, to let other deer hunters know that they're not alone. In Ozark, Missouri, I'm Rebecca Smith.
That story comes to us from member station KBIA in Columbia. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this has been The Gateway.